is powernomics.com. So if you go to powernomics.com, you get a copy of Dr. Anderson's book. And in case you don't know, his books are amazing. If you haven't taken a look yet, I encourage you to expose your children to Dr. Anderson before it's too late. Make sure that they get a chance to hear from the kind of Black people who care about them and the ones who can actually put them in a better position in the future. Because one thing that we're not doing is B1 people are not doing this, is we are not going to leave our kids' future to chance. And so this is one of the reasons why we do the book club, is because I want your kids to be exposed to a Black college professor at an early age, so that when they get older, it won't be such a weird thing. I didn't meet a Black college professor until I was 19 years old. That was Dr. Tommy Whitler, who has been my mentor since then. And when I met him, I really thought that he was the janitor. I really thought, I didn't even know that he was the professor, because I didn't know that Black men could do that. I thought Black men became like basketball players and football players. I didn't know that we could actually become professors and stuff like that. And I think that that's kind of what happens, and then what happens after that is our kids get typecast and stereotyped, and they start thinking that they can only do one or two things. It's like, okay, I'm a Black man, I can either be a comedian or an athlete or a rapper. And Lord Jesus knows, give me a yes if you agree with this, that we have an oversupply of 45-year-old Black men that want to be rappers. If you're a rapper, I'm not offending you, I promise you. I hope that your career blows up. But just know that, hey, the same intelligence that it takes to become a great rapper is the same intelligence that could be used to become a great doctor, lawyer, accountant, or business owner. And also, before I get started, though, I have to stop for a minute and just say hi to everybody. By the way, Tiara is in the chat inside the Zoom. So if you have any questions for Tiara or for us in the Black Business School, I bring a customer service person with me in tow to make sure that you are 100% satisfied, that you're always happy, that we can really help you. And in fact, in the Black Business School, I'm going to have a meeting very soon with our Prime program, which is where we sell stock options and generate income. Everybody who's in the program, that you can ask anybody if they like it, they're going to tell you they love it. So if you're interested in joining at a discount, the same discount we offer this weekend at the All Black National Convention, just go to drboyceprime.com. We're going to leave that discount open for another 48 hours. You can go to drboyceprime.com. And I'm not sure how many of you went to the convention this week in Atlanta, but it was totally packed up and we had a great time. And we're now going to have the next convention in Chicago. So for the next, I think, 4 days, you can get next year's convention tickets at 50% off, and the vendor passes if you want to be a vendor, sponsorships for half off. Everything's half off until Sunday. Once Sunday hits, it goes back to regular price, and we will sell out. I guarantee you we will sell out, because the convention is very popular, and anybody who's ever been, ask them what they think about the convention. If you came to the convention, say something in the chat so everybody will believe me that I'm not just blowing smoke. It is the best convention you will ever have gone to in your life. There is no other event like it, like the All Black National Convention. I'm just telling you, there's nothing like it anywhere. All right, so let's get started now. Karen has a question about the A, B, and C replay. Tiara, can you take care of Karen? If y'all have a customer service question, just ask Tiara. She's right there inside the Zoom chat. She can take good care of you. And also anybody, whoever has another question, you can email support@theblackbusinessschool.com. Let's get started. All right, so I'm gonna ask you a quick question. Do you think Black people can be racist? Give me a yes or no. Can we be racist? What do y'all think? Miss K Stella says it was powerful, changed my life. Yeah, I keep telling them that. I keep telling them the All Black National Convention will change your life. I mean, it changed my life, and I hosted the damn thing. I mean, the All Black National Convention, every person I talk to that goes to the convention literally says it's better than any convention they've ever been to. And so we're really proud of that. So, feel free to take a look, and it's very family friendly, and lots of learning and lots of connecting, and also a lot of fun. We had so much fun too. So anyway, do you think Black people can be racist? What do y'all think? I'd like to get your take on that, because Dr. Claude Anderson has a theory on Black people being racist. And to give you the short answer, Dr. Anderson says no. He says that Black people cannot be racist. And so that's interesting. And here's what I'm gonna do something tonight that's gonna probably freak some of y'all out. Y'all know I ride for Dr. Anderson. Y'all know how much I love this man. And y'all know that he is like a father to me. I literally, he's like my second dad. And I'm going to actually kind of not disagree. I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to take what he says and I'm going to add something to it that it's going to kind of change the answer to that question. I'm going to explain exactly what I mean. So I'm going to read the Black History Reader. Give me 1 second here. All right, so here here's I'm gonna pull up the book. Give me 1 second, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best not to mess stuff up here. All right, so here is the book, and by the way, if you're on Instagram or something like that, you can actually go to try going to drboycetv.com or something like that, because it looks like you're going in and out, and I don't know, sometimes household Wi-Fi acts weird. All right, so I'm going to read this to you and help you understand why Dr. Anderson does not believe Black people have the ability to be racist. Okay, so Marlon and Rhonda and Shauna from Gastonia. I see. Shauna, I'm sorry. Shauna's on our team. She's not from Gastonia. Karen's from Gastonia, and Anthony Cobbler from Canada. Good to see you. All right. He says, question 10, this is on page 31 of the Black History Reader. What is racism, and can a Black person be racist? He says, racism is a group-based power and economic control phenomenon. So I'm going to underline that. Racism is a group-based power and economic control phenomenon in which one racial group owns and controls so much wealth and resource power that it can enslave, subordinate, exploit, exclude, or render another group non-competitive. Okay, so I think we should start there with that first sentence. A lot of y'all got the wrong definition of racism. A lot of you got the wrong definition of racism, because a lot of us grew up where they would say you go to the grocery store and the lady would cut in front of you in line, and she's white, and she would say, I cut in front of Black people, and you would say that lady was racist. That was so racist. Or you hear that your neighbor doesn't like Black people, and you say, see, he's racist. Well, that definition of racism is kind of the wimpy, not irrelevant definition of racism. That definition of racism is built around whether or not somebody likes you. I don't care if people like me or not. And this goes deeper than whether or not somebody likes you. They could actually like you and still be racist against you. In fact, I dare to say that America likes Black people very much. America likes Black people very much for the same reason you like your car, because you can use your car to get you from point A to point B. The same way you might like your dog, or the same way you might like your favorite pair of socks. I believe that they really like Black people because we are a tremendous asset for them. Think about this. You have 40 million people who literally we were the original hired help. Now they're bringing in the immigrants, right? But we were the original hired help. We weren't even hired, but we were hired but not paid, right? They paid somebody else for us, right? So we were an asset. So, the same way I love this microphone because this microphone helps my voice come through the sound system, or the same way I like my TV set, I think they like Black people for that reason, that anybody would love a group of people they can use and manipulate and exploit and extract wealth from, right? They don't want you going nowhere. They don't want you going back to Africa. They need you to stay right here so they can keep making money off of you. All right, look at how many trillions of dollars. I mean, look at Deion Sanders alone has generated $1 billion for white people. By the end of next year, he will have generated $1 billion for Colorado. So they love Coach Prime in Colorado. They said, this guy made us wealthier. Thank you, Deion. We'll pay you your $5 million. We'll take the other $995 million. Thank you very much. So anyway, let me keep going. So he says here that racism is a group-based power and economic control phenomenon. So group-based, it's about power, it's about economic control. That's what he says here. He says, in which one racial group owns and controls so much wealth and resource power that it can enslave, subordinate, exploit, exclude, or render another group non-competitive. That's a lot deeper than some lady telling you that she don't like you at the grocery store. So don't ever fall for the false definition of racism to somehow mean that it's all about whether or not people like you. Who cares if they like you? They could all scream Black Lives Matter at the same time and still be as racist as the day is long. Racism is one of the most contentious so let me keep going. So it can predetermine what the lesser group, what the lesser power group can own, control, its wealth, and the extent to which it will be allowed to compete. Racism is one of the most contentious and dangerous terms in the English lexicon and is overused and misapplied by laymen and scholars alike. In a society in which the policy of benign neglect is where they pretend to be your friend and don't do anything for you. Does there sound like any political party you know of that pretends to be your friend? And give me a yes if you can think of any political party that pretends to be the friend of Black people, but doesn't really do anything for Black people. Any names ring a bell? Mr. Jan Jasmine says the Democrats. That's funny. All right. So, let's see. Benign neglect is still operative against Blacks. There has been an effort to equate and replace racism with classism. Class is defined by economic status, education level, and employment status and professional accomplishment. Class is fluid, so you can move from one class to another. Racism against Blacks is fixed. It's fixed. Classism and racism are not the same. Blacks as a group, not as individuals, Very important to understand that. So Lil Wayne, I think I heard Lil Wayne say, white people are very nice to me. Well, that's because you make them lots of money by getting on stage and calling yourself a nigga. Like, that's why they love you. They like any Black man who performs, an adequate minstrel show. He's very intelligent. Don't get me wrong, very intelligent. But if he was not thugged out, tattooed from head to toe, called himself the N-word and disrespected women, they wouldn't like him nearly as much. If he showed up and said, I'm like Malcolm X, I'm intelligent and smart and I run with Farrakhan or whatever, right? And I believe in supporting the Black community, they would not be as so nice to Lil Wayne. They probably define him as dangerous. But if he shows up as a thug, it's like, oh, okay, we like thugs. We like guys who are going to drink so much syrup that they're going to die by the age of 45. That's good. We like that for you, right? So let's keep reading here. Racism against Blacks is fixed. Classism and racism are not the same. Blacks as a group cannot cross the color or race line. Religious, gender, ethnic, or cultural groups are not the victims of racism, but of classism. The power and economic control phenomenon of racism is non-applicable to them because classes are subcategories of the larger society, and generally they participated in the economic enrichment from Black enslavement. Further, classes are open and fluid and promote the right to compete for equality. So classism is not racism. Do we understand that? Are we in agreement with that? That when people try to relegate the racial conversation to one about class and poverty, anybody ever seen that? I remember when I was young, I remember becoming very frustrated when there was a very nice lady who was, I guess you might call her an ally. She was a liberal white woman. And I told her, I said, racism really bothers me. I really want to battle against things like wealth inequality. And she said, race is not the issue. She said, we have to get rid of poverty. And I remember suddenly I felt the weight of 8,000 gorillas on my back all at one time, like all of them like wearing backpacks, overweight gorillas, big, heavy gorillas on my back, because I remember thinking to myself, how in the hell am I going to solve poverty? Like, I don't know how to solve poverty. I don't know how to get rid of, do you mean I got to solve all of poverty before we can start talking about racism? Really? And some of you may have heard this. Some of you may have seen this, where people want to say it's not race, it's about class and poverty and the wealth gap for all Americans and all that. And I could just say that really dilutes your ability to get what you deserve and get what you want. So let me keep going here. He says racism came into existence on the eve of the Civil War after all the resources had been distributed to European whites. The practice of racism was originally designed to deny Blacks the right to compete, to be equal, and to become a class. When racism is group-based, class discrimination is individualized and arises from prevailing societal issues. For instance, when Arabs are profiled and connected to terrorism, it is discrimination, but it is not racism. Interesting, right? Pay attention. This is what Dr. Anderson says. When Hispanics are profiled and associated with illegal immigration, it is not racism, but discrimination arising out of contemporary social concerns. In neither of the recited instances is the purpose of the class discrimination to exploit, enslave, or segregate all members of the classes. It is inaccurate to equate class minorities to Blacks and racism. So do you understand what he's saying? Do y'all get that? I want us to digest that for a moment. So Dr. Anderson, in his book, The Black History Reader, which all your children should read, I go to powernomics.com. That's where his books are. He's basically saying that when someone says, in Chicago, you won't let the migrants come in and take over entire neighborhoods, or you won't let migrants become police officers, that's racist. No, it's not. It might be discrimination. It might be something else, but it's not racism, because according to Dr. Anderson, I'm gonna read this slowly. He says that racism is when your goal is to exploit, enslave, or segregate all members of a certain class. So according to Dr. Anderson, he says that Black racism, anti-Black racism, is a very different experience from any other type of discrimination that exists in our society, and that effectively you have to stop letting everybody call everything racist when it involves any person who happens to not be a white man, right? And then you know how I feel about us sort of referring to anybody who feels mistreated and comparing that to racism. Oh, we feel just like the black people do. No, my heart goes out to you if you're a guy who wants to dress like a lady. I don't even have anything against that. That's your right to do that, but that's not the same as what black people have gone through. And I think that it's very important that you isolate our experience from everything else. Let's keep going. History reveals that the concept of racism has undergone a metamorphosis in both meaning and application through the centuries. To understand racism and deal with it effectively, it is important to understand the historical origin and purpose of racism, to know what it is and what it is not. Racism is a word and concept, did not just pop up out of the blue. It evolved from a confluence of events and circumstances. The practice of equating individualized gender, ethnic, cultural, and religious discrimination to institutionalized racism against Black people provides justification for continuing the racial status quo. In the late 1400s, two essential factors came together from which racism evolved. So we're going back 600 years now. Okay, you all follow me? Give me a yes if you're following me. I don't, sometimes some people say I read really fast, so let me know if I'm reading too fast. Give me a yes if you're following me. Okay, thank you, Albert and Clarence and April and Anthony. I appreciate that. Okay, I just want to make sure because I get excited. Y'all know how I am. It's my ADHD. Can't help it. All right, so we're going back to the 1400s. Two essential factors came together from which racism evolved: the possibility of free land in the Americas and free labor from African Blacks. So land and labor, keep that in your mind. At that time, the entire continent of Europe was, look at this, pay attention now, Europe, very wealthy country now, or continent, excuse me, very wealthy continent. At that time, the entire continent of Europe was dysfunctional, ravaged by famine, crime, poverty, and disease. I mean, all of Europe was just it was just ghetto, just real ghetto to be a European at that time. It was ravaged. They had just gotten out of the Black Plague. If you don't know, the Black Plague killed 1/3 of all of Europe. So entire systems had fallen apart. There is no hood you've ever been in that is in a worse condition than Europe looked like at that time, right? Before they discovered the wealth they could get from Africa. Do you understand? Are you following? Okay. So he mentions ravaged by famine, crime, poverty, and disease. European countries were looking for lands to conquer to infuse their nations with new energy and wealth. The Catholic Church, these religious guys, was the leading invader and controller of world expansionism. During that period, the Vatican was given 16 Black slaves as a gift. A short time later, Pope Innocent issued a special edict and declared that Blacks should be used as free labor, thereby establishing a new kind of slavery. Until that time, a person could only be enslaved for 3 reasons. Pay attention. Before that, slavery only happened for 3 reasons: religious persecution, personal indebtedness, or being a prisoner of war. So before anti-Black slavery occurred, you could only be enslaved for 1 of 3 reasons: because of your religion, personal indebtedness, you have a debt. Well, that type of slavery still exists. A lot of us go into modern day debt slavery, which is called things like student loans or credit cards. And we talk about that. In case, I hope you'll hang out with us if you're new, because we talk about these things and I break these things down for you. I'm a college professor. I've seen thousands of students get so stuck on their student loan debt that they have to keep their jobs forever. So escaping the corporate plantation is a real thing. That's a big deal. And then being a prisoner of war, right? You lose a war, you're going to lose your freedom. And so this is why you need people that are going to fight. Shout out to every veteran in here. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for your service. I know y'all are in here. Shout yourselves out, because you'll never hear me disrespect a veteran in this space, because I know how important you are for the security of this nation. So thank you for what you do. All right. So when Columbus returned to Europe with news that he had discovered a new uninhabited land, he said uninhabited. Right? I guess in his mind, it means there's no white people there, because Africa was clearly inhabited. The Americas were inhabited. A vision took hold. So when he discovered this new land that he thought was uninhabited, a new vision took hold to merge available free Black labor with new free land. So we got the land, let's get the labor, because once we get the land, we need people to work the land. At that precise point, racism replaced tribalism, the social structure of Europe at the time. So before this moment, there was tribalism in Europe. And so they said, okay, instead of us fighting each other, let's all unify and control these people, because they're going to be the ones that are going to help make us rich. Baby, I'm back. This is how Europe is going to come back in terms of wealth and power. 9 European nations went into competition. A political economic race commenced to see which country could best exploit free black labor and use it to capture land, resources, and wealth to enrich their countries. That economic race using free black labor lasted until the eve of 1861, the Civil War in the U.S. The race between the European nations ended at this point because the resources and wealth of the Americas had been distributed, and nearly 100% of everything was now in the hands of white Europeans. At the same time, European slaveholders denied enslaved blacks the right not only to enjoy the fruits of their labor, but also the right to acquire land, wealth, and political power. These exclusions were instituted as law, and blacks were defined as powerless property. The founding fathers rigged the race. They crafted a social construct that locked blacks into a constitutional underclass status, and white society as a group remains opposed to corrective redistribution of wealth, power, or resources to black Americans. So what Dr. Anderson's saying is this. I'm gonna speculate on what he's trying to say here. I believe that what Dr. Anderson is trying to help you understand is that whenever they take a poll, anybody ever seen when they take a poll, they poll the Republicans and they say, are you pro or against reparations? What do the Republicans say? What is your average all the Republicans that are telling you to go vote for Trump because Biden sucks, which he does, but they're all the ones that are trying to get you to vote for Trump. When they are asked about reparations, what do they say? Do they say, yeehaw, yeah, let's take care of black people. We're asking them for so much. We should give them something back. We should do right by black people. What are the Republicans supporting the move for reparations? Yes or no? No, they're not. Absolutely not. All right. When you go to your Democratic allies, when you go to all the people that were running around screaming Black Lives Matter and holding marches and vigils and putting on kente cloth and stuff in Congress to show how much they love you, and you say, hey, we'd like reparations, and they all vote and decide what they want to do. What do they say? Do they vote yes or no? No. Thank you, Karen and Mr. Jan Jasmine and Cam S. and Jay Jordan and Cheryl. No, they do not. They do not support reparations. So effectively what Dr. Anderson appears to be saying is that their lack of willingness to make you full functional members of this society by giving you the money that they know they stole from you, the money they know. This is not a debate. This is not something that has to be proven. This is not a crime for which you must secure an indictment by bringing evidence to the court of law. This is not something that this is not up for debate anymore. The evidence is everywhere of what was stolen from black people. It happened even in my own family. I had a great uncle that got lynched because a white man said something to his wife and he spoke back to the white guy. I had another great uncle who owned an entire town and they killed him and just took all his property. A lot of that behavior continues to this day. If you have something that we want, we beat you up, kill you, lock you up, or falsely accuse you of a crime so we can take it from you. Anybody heard about Mel Tucker over at Michigan State University? I want to connect the dots here for you. Anybody heard the story about Mel Tucker? I talked about this. I need everybody to know this story. Mel Tucker is the football coach at Michigan State. He was the football coach at Michigan State. And Mel Tucker had a $95 million contract. And a lady, it appears that there is a lady who falsely accused him of being nasty on the phone, talking dirty, like touching himself. That's what she said. She said he touched himself and it wasn't consensual. And it turns out that after all her text messages were released, that it was a money grab, that literally she understood something about America, which is that if you see a black man that has a lot of resources, all you got to do is find some way to accuse him of something and they'll take everything he's got. So because without even investigating, Michigan State, another very racist university, apparently, that doesn't believe in due process for black men, literally fired him. They fired him based on the word of a woman who was a proven liar, a woman who at least has a very questionable track record in terms of telling the truth. When you read those text messages, and it's all out there on the internet, you can go look it up. Look up Mel Tucker. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but look it up. And so when I saw this happen, I need you to connect the dots. This can only happen in America because if Mel Tucker was a white woman, that never would have occurred. If that white woman had been a black man, that never would have occurred. There is nothing on this earth, in this country, that I, as a black man, can falsely accuse a white woman of that would deprive her, give me a yes if you're following this, that would deprive her of every single thing she's got, deprive her of her reputation, and destroy her ability to ever get a job anywhere for the rest of her career. There's nothing I could go and say, we were on the phone and she said, hey, Boyce, why don't you come over here so I can give you some? I can say all that. I can say, and I told her that it was against consent, and she came up and grabbed my booty. Like, I can say all these things and I would get laughed at, right? But when you flip the race, the whole equation changes. Do you follow? I need to make it plain so you can understand what Dr. Anderson does. And this is why this man is so important. This is why he's a national treasure, is he helps you understand that this is a 400-year-old tradition. There's a foundation to this. So in that last couple of sentences, he says, they crafted a social construct. They crafted a way of thinking, a way of doing business in America. They crafted a social contract that locked blacks into a constitutional underclass status, and white society as a group remains opposed to corrective redistribution of wealth, power, or resources to black Americans. So no, they're not going to pay you your reparations, even though for hundreds of years, they've always said, hey, if a black person ever gets access to anything, let's just beat them up and take their money. Because we have the law on our side, because it was codified in the law. He used that term earlier. I think he said the word codified or something similar. It was put in the law that you have that ability to extract wealth out of black people, that you have that ability to keep them as an underclass, that you have that ability to make sure that they remain uncompetitive, especially when it comes to economics. And also, what's really important to understand when Dr. Anderson talks about racism is I need us to stop getting caught up in individual success of individual black people. I need us to stop looking at some Negro they put on TV and saying, well, look at all the black people that are doing so well. Look at all the black people in Hollywood. Look at all the black people making rap music. Look at all the black. That don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. That means nothing relative to what's going on with the group. If you want to measure economic progress of the black community, here's what you do. You take all 40 million people, you look at their average income, their median income, you look at quality of life of the average median person in the black community. You don't just look at Jay-Z and say, look at what Jay-Z is doing. Everybody's doing great. Look at Jay. No, that's one guy. And that's one guy in one special, unique profession where black men and women are allowed to succeed, as long as your rappers are not exactly the healthiest members of the black community. And that's one of the reasons why they're allowed to become wealthy and powerful and famous, because they fit the description. They fit the stereotype. Same reason that Denzel never got an Oscar or anything for any of the great movies that he had done before he did Training Day. When he did Training Day, they said, that's a good now right there. Like that's what we expect from those people. That was so realistic. So you mean when he did Malcolm X, he wasn't just as talented? When he did all these other great movies, when he was in Glory, you ain't gonna give him an award for Glory, of course, right? You're not gonna give him an award for some of the other great roles he's played, The Pelican Brief and all these other dozens of movies that he's done. No, you wait till he did Training Day, and when he's acting like the most corrupt, unethical piece of crap, dirtbag thug that he can be. Remember he's sitting in the car with a cigarette, my nigga, right? It doesn't seem weird even seeing Denzel act like that, but whatever, he did a great job. He deserved that award, but it was interesting to me that was when they gave him the award, because they said, okay, this is realistic. This is what we expect. If he had been playing a college professor or a medical doctor, he would not have won that Oscar. That's what I truly believe. Okay, so anyway, let me keep going here. Let me keep reading. Also, just a reminder, if you want to take a look at, we have new financial flashcards for my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. And if you want a copy of the book or an autographed copy or something like that, you can go to drboycebooks.com. And I mentioned to you guys the Each One Teach One program, where if you want to buy 10 books or more at the wholesale rate and sell them or give them away, you're welcome to do that. Just go to drboycebooks.com, hit the search box, look for Each One Teach One, and you can buy them in bulks of 10. And we deeply discount the price by about 35% or something like that to make it affordable. So if you want to sell them at retail, you can make it in into a business. I would love for as many people as possible to actually see the book. And we also have the financial flashcards for children, workbooks, stuff like that. The Black Business School, as you covered. So I hope that you'll take a look at some of the great stuff that we're doing here. All right, so let me finish reading this last paragraph. So Dr. Claude Anderson, in his book, The Black History Reader, which is at powernomics.com, he says, after all the resources have been distributed to whites by the 1860s, the concept of racism morphed from an economic issue to one of biology, with Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection presented in his 1859 book, Origin of the Species. In this book, he ranked living organisms and classified blacks at the bottom of human species. I didn't know Darwin was on some BS like that. So even Charles Darwin, if you don't know, he wrote a very famous book about, anybody ever heard of the term survival of the fittest? Have you heard that? Everybody know what that is? Everybody heard that term? Because I know some of you have your kids here, and I want to be conscious of that so they can understand. So survival of the fittest basically talks about competition among different species and how the fittest and the strongest are the ones that get the greatest opportunity to reproduce. And the way I see it in like the real world is like, if you have some guy who's like super smart and really tall with a lot of muscles, a lot of girls, are chasing after him. So he might be considered the fittest. That's the one that that women naturally want to mate with. So he gets more mating opportunities to reproduce, and his seed survives to the next generation. Whereas the fat, dumpy, sick little guy, he's going to have a harder time. And so basically, it's sort of this genetic battle for the fittest genes of whatever, right? So he's basically saying in his book, Charles Darwin, this, I guess, alleged scientist, and I'm not gonna say he wasn't a good scientist. Maybe he just, unfortunately, he was poisoned with racism. He says he ranked Black people at the bottom of human species. Wow. Out of Darwin's biological theories grew the requirement that all persons be identified by racial designations on birth certificates, driver's licenses, and other public documents. Race remained a biological issue until a century later with the advent of the civil rights movement, when racism morphed again. The concept of racism expanded and took on a more colloquial and casual meaning that signified not power, but personal feelings about liking or disliking individuals. Remember, I was mentioning that earlier. That lady in the grocery store saying she don't like Black people. People are like, oh, that's racist. You racist. And they make it into this thing about people's feelings as opposed to making it about power and resources. And so I want to make sure that we understand that the definition of racism is more symbolic of systematic effects that deprive certain groups of people of opportunities and economic possibility. It's about power. It is not about whether or not somebody likes you. It's also not an individual thing. It is a team sport. Okay. So racism is not, tennis, one person against another person. It's football, right? It's a system. So let's keep going. So race remained a biological issue. Let me see, until a century later with the advent of the civil rights movement, when racism morphed again. The concept of racism expanded and took on a more colloquial and casual meaning that signified not power, but personal feelings about liking or disliking individuals. This misdirection and misapplication of the term racism allowed the original objective of racism to maintain the inequality between whites and Blacks to continue unabated. So because you misidentified what racism is, you never solved the problem of racism. That's what happened. Racism is like the criminal who robbed the bank. They got in the getaway car and then they switched cars, and they gave the car to somebody else, and that car went south and the bank robbers went north. So the cops started going south and they're chasing the wrong car. So the part of the reason that racism is not being solved in America is because the people who are allegedly trying to solve the racial problem in America are chasing the wrong car. They've misidentified what racism is. They don't even know how to identify racism in a lineup, because if you ask most people to define racism, they are going to define it incorrectly. So what I'm going to do when I finish this last paragraph is I'm going to go back and I'm going to read Dr. Anderson's original definition of what racism is and why he thinks Black people can't be racist in America. And then I'm also going to add a little twist to it in terms of solutions. I'm a mathematician. We solve problems. So I want to kind of help solve this a little bit for you. I hope that's okay. All right. So let me keep going. So This misdirection and misapplication of the term racism allowed the original objective of racism to maintain the inequality between whites and blacks to continue unabated. Racism grew out of the competitive race between groups to control wealth and power. Wealth and power. Show me the money. As early as 1516 in North America, whites have been the winners and blacks the losers, allowed only to react to white racism. Blacks do not have power or wealth. It is therefore not possible for them to be racist. So Dr. Anderson says that because in America, that black people as a collective do not have power in power in wealth, it is not possible for black people to be racist. I like that. I think that's a great layout, a great definition. And in fact, I'm not even disagreeing with him. I'm just going to simply add a little twist to it to help us understand it a little bit better. So let me go back before I get into what Boyce thinks, though. It's very important to understand what Dr. Anderson thinks. He's the king. He's the godfather. That's my daddy right there. So I'm gonna show respect to my daddy, and then the son will speak, and I hope that's okay. He says in the beginning, racism is a group-based power and economic control phenomenon in which one racial group owns and controls so much wealth and resource power that it can enslave, subordinate, exploit, exclude, or render another group non-competitive. The dominant racial group can make life and death decisions for potential competitor groups. It can predetermine what the lesser powered group can own, control, its wealth, and the extent to which it will be allowed to compete. Now, here's what I want to add in here. Here's what I want to throw in here, right? When Dr. Anderson talks about racism, another way to describe it might be the term systematic racism. When he talks about group-based initiatives, group-based power, he's really talking about systems or large numbers of people, codes of conduct, etc., right? Just sort of a way of doing things. Now, one of the things that I've mentioned to you is that part of the reason that the system makes you feel oppressed. Actually, let me check. How many of y'all have felt oppressed by this system at some point? Give me a yes if you felt at some point oppressed by the economic system. Give me a yes. Give me a yes if you at some point have felt oppressed by the educational system. Give me a yes in the chat. Give me a yes if at some point you felt oppressed by the healthcare system. Give me a yes. Okay. Give me a yes if you've at some time felt oppressed by maybe our system of media, Hollywood, the crap that's coming out of Hollywood. Anybody felt that? I know I have. It sucks, right? It all sucks. So here's what I think we have to understand too, is that the degree to which you feel oppressed or harmed by a particular system is heavily connected to the degree to which you are connected to and committed to that system. Now, I speak to some of y'all. When I was at the All Black National Convention this week in Atlanta, I met a lot of parents who were running homeschool networks. I met a sister named Queen Thais who runs a whole massive homeschool network. And so they are the public school system. It's not like, oh, we got to worry about what the superintendent of Chicago Public Schools is going to do. No, Queen Thais is the superintendent. The parents are the teachers and the administrators. They run that school. That is a system. They have a process. They have a way of doing things. Now, let me ask you this. Give me a yes or no. Do you think that those children are oppressed by the educational system that they are exposed to? Yes or no? Do you think that they feel oppressed? Do you think they feel like, man, it's hard being black up in here? Queen Thais, she be just mean. She be slapping Negroes, man. She don't got no respect for black. Do you think that they feel oppressed? No, they don't. They don't. And I'm not just talking about Queen Thais. Chanel, who works with us, she's part of homes. A lot of Hebrew Israelite individuals that I work with, so much respect to you, Nation of Islam, they get it. Their kids are not. I went to Muhammad University of Islam. They're not worried so much about the Chicago public school system. They maybe just feel bad for the kids whose parents have put them in those systems, right? And again, no criticism, but this is the point. The point is to say that one thing about being in a system and being oppressed by a system is you must ask yourself, why am I here? Being oppressed by a system, for the most part, is a lot like being in an abusive relationship. You're fighting with your partner. You're asking them to be nicer to you. You're asking that woman to respect you, and she refuses to. You're asking that man to give you some flowers, and he don't want to give you no flowers. He gives flowers to a side chick. Or you're asking people to do right and they won't do right. Well, there is a point where you have to ask yourself, hold yourself accountable and say, why am I committed to this thing that we created together that doesn't serve me in an appropriate way? Why am I chasing love in all the wrong places? Why am I committed to something that's not committed to me? Why am I giving to something that's not giving back? Why am I in a situation where I am constantly the giver and somebody else is the taker? So when you look at things like, for example, the school system, I think it's absolute simple common sense to say that every parent in America who cares about the issue of racism should do everything in their power to keep their children out of the public school system, especially if they feel that that system is a racist system. It doesn't make racism go away, but it does, at least in that context, protect you and protect your child from whatever they're going to do to your child, right? The same thing can be true. Let's go to the economic system. A lot of you have been on the corporate plantation. All of us have. A lot of you have. I was. And when I worked for people that did not like me, I did not enjoy it. It was not fun. It was very stressful. I got up every day I went to work. I felt angry. My blood pressure would rise. It was a terrible, terrible feeling. So that's when I realized, and I figured this out when I was about 36 years old. At 36 years old, I said the best way for me to confront the oppression of this economic system is to put myself in a space where I have a system of my own. I don't have to go take over the country. I don't have to change Syracuse University and fight them and beg them to change the way they've been doing things for 100 years. I don't have to change the whole world. I don't have to change the whole world. I do not have to change the entire world. All I've got to do is change the world around me. I only had to change my world. So what did that mean? Well, that means I said, man, I think I spent years learning the wrong stuff. Instead, I spent years in the system, fighting the system, trying to succeed despite the system, when I really never should have been in the system. If I could go back to when I was 18, I'm not saying I wouldn't want to get a PhD, but I would have got it for fun. Instead, when I was 18, you know what I would have done? I would have spent all my time learning how to start a business. I talked to a 29-year-old the other day, and he said, I'm trying to get these jobs in engineering. Nobody's hiring. It's really hard. I'm really depressed. I'm going through it. My girl's looking at me funny because I don't know what to do. And I feel kind of bad because I'm a grown man and I should be doing better. And I said, I understand because I've heard this a million times. You don't understand that the wino started, the idea of a man being a wino sitting around drinking out of a paper bag all day, that started when the steel mills all went out of business and Black men could no longer get jobs. So I said, I understand this. I said, so if you want to know how to be successful financially, I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of advice on how to tighten up your resume, how to apply for the right jobs, how to do the right follow-up. Somebody else can show you that. What I am going to tell you is that if you want to be where you want to be economically, you just have to do one thing. And he said, what's that? I said, one thing, just find a product that people need and learn how to sell it to them. Just find something that people need and then learn how to sell it to them. If you can find out what people want and you can go get it and sell it to them, then you'll have all the money you want. That solves your money problem. Your money problems will go away. Your girl's gonna think you're the greatest. Right? And to me, is it hard? Yeah, it's very hard, right? It's very, very hard to leave the economic system and all the temptations that exist, right? That if you get lucky, things will be great for you, but it doesn't happen for a lot of us. It's very scary to do that and very difficult, but it's also scary and difficult to find a way to survive in that system that doesn't want you. So either way, it's going to be hard. So this was my process, and this is how I process. I said, okay, it's going to be really hard for me to figure out how to get these people to like me, and for me to, in academia, we all go for this thing called tenure. Tenure is where it's like a lifetime job. It's like welfare for smart people. And I remember thinking, it's going to be. I published so many papers. I've worked 10 hours a day. I don't know how to get these people to give me tenure. I said, that's going to be really hard. So I said, okay, so it's really hard for me to figure out how to get tenure, but it's also hard for me to figure out how to start a business. So the difference, though, is that if I figure out how to get tenure, that means I get a life sentence working next to people who don't even like me that much, But if I solve this other problem over here, I can be free. I can be free. And I might get rich at the same time. I might go out here and make a few $1,000,000 if I do it really well. So I said, well, since I got to pick something hard anyway, I might as well pick the hard thing that liberates me as opposed to the hard thing that makes me more comfortable in a really awkward, uncomfortable, dysfunctional situation. Do you understand? So I'm going to say this. A lot of what Dr. Anderson's saying, I mean, it's so true. I'm not disagreeing with anything he's saying here. But what I am going to say is that a lot of this idea of systematic racism is predicated on what system you're in. Like there's no Chinese person who feels oppressed by white Americans. They don't. They live in China. They're in a different system, right? So the same way a Chinaman is in a different system from an American, a Black person in America can be in a different economic system than a white person in America. I'm not saying that white people are bad. I don't walk around talking about how much I dislike white folks. So let's get off of that stuff. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is you finding a way to put yourself in a place where you can battle this thing called racism in a way that gets you the results that you're looking for. And I can just tell you that most systems are contrived and created by somebody else. Let me give you an example of how racism can be flipped within the context of a system. I knew a really nice guy, a professor of accounting, who happened to be white. And he told me, he said, I taught at an HBCU, and I forgot which one. He said, and to be honest with you, that was the first time I ever knew how Black people must feel when they go work at white universities. He said, I felt mistreated. I felt disrespected. I felt like I was part of the underclass, and because he was the odd man out. Or if you go to Ghana, when I was in Ghana, everybody was Black. So the white guys and the Asian guys, they were the ones who had to worry about what we thought about them. We didn't have to worry about them. We were just living. We were just existing. So I would encourage you to just understand one important rule about life, which is that if you're in a place where you're not valued, you should go to a place where your value will be seen. One analogy I saw online that I thought was great was they said that a bottle of water, it could cost $1 at a gas station, $2 in a grocery store, $4 in a drugstore, $5 in a football stadium, $7 on an airplane. The water never changes. It's the same water, same amount, same everything. The only thing that has changed is the location. So I would say to you, if you're not valued where you are, if you're not valued, whether it's in your relationship, in your job, in your whatever educational system, whatever system you're a part of, because or even a relationship is a system, right? Then go somewhere else. You can always go somewhere else. Never forget that you have that option. We talk about options all the time from a financial standpoint, right? We have stock options class and all that in the Black Business School, but options are general. That's a general concept. That's not just a financial concept. Typically, people who have options are better off than people who don't. In fact, the opposite of slavery is options. Slaves have no options, but you don't have to be a slave. Okay. So this is where I would say with Dr. Anderson's definition, his definition of racism is a system in which one group racially oppresses another group. And what I can tell you is that I've been in Black-owned businesses where Black people had all the power, and Black people were then the ones who were challenged to be ethical enough to decide not to oppress people who didn't look like them. Or when you're running that family business, or when you and your kids are working together and you're creating that empire that's yours, well, then the outsiders are at a disadvantage. But when you're constantly going to other people's institutions and trying to barge your way in, you're always going to be at a disadvantage because that is not your space and you are by yourself. You don't have the strength that comes with teamwork. You don't have familiarity there. You're not culturally aligned with that space. So I just think about that in the sense of like imagining somebody trying to come into our family business and acting like I'm going to treat them like one of my kids. That's just not going to happen. My kids will always have an advantage in a business that is run by me. So this is why in the Black Business School, in our Black Core of 3, in case you don't know it, it is that Black people, we should educate our own children. That's one system. Create our own jobs. That's another system, and support Black-owned businesses. And that's supporting the second system. If we do those things, then we're going to see our strength and power grow. So I'm going to read again what Dr. Anderson says here, this first paragraph. The first paragraph is very powerful. This is page 31 of the Black History Reader. He says, racism is a group-based power and economic control phenomenon. So group-based power and economic control in which one racial group owns and controls so much wealth and resource power that it can enslave. So he's talking about the fact that it's group-based. It's about power and economics. It's not about people liking you. Also, one group controls the vast majority of the resources and wealth in that system, right? So if you go through downtown Chicago, downtown Denver, or any other major city, and you look at all the buildings, and I dare you to go downtown and find one skyscraper owned by a Black person. I dare you to find one skyscraper, even in Detroit, with all the Black people we have in Detroit. Most of those skyscrapers are not owned by Black people. We don't even own the gas stations. So then what happens is the power is accumulated by one group, and then they're able to use that power to, it says you can enslave, subordinate, exploit, so enslave, control their labor, right? We know what that is. Subordinate, I am better than you. I am higher in the hierarchy than you are. Exploit, I'm going to then make money off of you. Did they ever do that with Black people? Do they still do that with Black people? Do they still make money from us? Yes, they do. Exclude. Do you think Black people feel excluded in America? Right? Exclude. Render another group non-competitive. We're heavily non-competitive for the most part. We don't dare. We'll compete with each other. You'll see Black people fighting with other Black people before you see them fighting with the system, and that's because many people have deemed themselves non-competitive. The dominant racial group can make life and death decisions for potential competitor groups. It can determine what the lesser power group can own, control, its wealth, and the extent to which it will be allowed to compete. So, and according to Dr. Anderson, one other point that's interesting in this chapter is he talks about something that doesn't get discussed much in the whole debate with reparations. With reparations, one thing that people talk about is they talk about reparations, and the book's called The Black History Reader. It's on powernomics.com. Everybody should get a copy. So one of the interesting things about Dr. Anderson's first chapter is he also discusses the fact that the Catholic Church is heavily involved in the reparations conversation. A lot of people talk about reparations in terms of it being about the government. The government owes this, the government owes that. Be really careful about getting caught in that trap, because the government is $32 trillion in debt. The US government's deep in debt. But there are many institutions in America that are not in debt, that are making $100 billion a quarter, that also should be required to contribute to that pot when it comes to reparations. This is not just a government debt. There are churches that owe trillions of dollars to the Black community. The Catholic Church actually had an opportunity to slow down slavery. They could have done the right thing and just said, look, it's not right to enslave these people, and people would have listened to the Vatican. But instead, the Vatican kind of gave the green light. The Vatican said, yeah, sure, you can go ahead and enslave those people. I mean, they're not human anyway, right? So the Vatican has a debt to repay. Major universities have a debt to repay. Major industries have a debt to repay. And I don't think it has to be so explicit as having to prove precisely how much money the company made off of slaves and all that. I get that stuff. I understand. Well, this company used to insure the slaves and blah, blah, blah. I think that's fine. But the problem is that I don't think you're going to really dig to the root of everything that's owed by doing that. I don't think letting people kind of nitpick things and it's going to really get the amount of money that's truly owed. Because I'm sitting here thinking, and what do I mean by that? Well, let's say you go back and you find stories about families that owned 50 acres of land, and the sheriff just decided that one of the business owners, one of the big bankers or in town or whatever, that they wanted to own this land. So they just go to the person's house and they falsely accuse them of a crime and lock them up and steal their land. And then next thing you know, because the land is basically abandoned, they just hand it to the highest bidder, who bids maybe pennies on the dollar for the land and takes ownership. Exactly who should be forced to repay that? I think that's a tougher conversation. I would prefer it be a situation where we just say, Let's go back and let's just look at all this land, and let's sort of look at it as an aggregate amount of money that's owed. All the corporations that are making money are required to pay into this pot. Everybody. I don't care if you have a direct lineage to slavery or not. All of you benefited from the fact that America would not be the wealthiest country on the planet had it not been for the labor of Black people. So I don't care if you are a person who is a first generation citizen from another country, you owe too, because you came to America, got rich off of America, off of what was built. The infrastructure was built for you to come to this country and to make all the money that you made. So you also owe the debts that are just owed in the general American space. So all this reparations money, it's owed by the banks. It's owned by all the major corporations. It's owned by all the major universities. The government should have to pay a piece. Religious institutions should all pay a piece. Every single entity in this country should be required to repay. In fact, I think, so just really even looking at fundamental things like why do we assume that I can go to a major city like Seattle, and if I go and I look at all the buildings in Seattle, none of those buildings are owned by Black people. And I don't think we understand just how that just makes no sense, that none of them, like you would think a few skyscrapers would be owned by a group that worked this hard, that represented 13% of the population, but none of it, right? Or all those opportunities where land, millions of acres of land was given away through homestead acts and stuff like that. We should have some of that land. And the problem with the reparations conversation is that it's going to be really contentious. A lot of people are going to get very upset with the Black community for demanding reparations, and honestly, I don't think they're going to really pay the amount that they're supposed to pay the first time around. I think it's going to have to be something that's going to have to be we're going to have to be a little bit pushy and a little bit radical. And also, at the very least, I think that when you're talking about dealing with racism and systematic racism, you've got to really question your commitment to these systems, because these systems become more powerful because from birth you're trained to commit to those systems. Like nobody told you that you had to go get a bunch of student loans and commit to this educational economic apartheid where universities have drained so much wealth out of the Black community. They should be paying reparations. I heard somewhere this week at the All Black National Convention, I don't know if this is true, I haven't checked the stat, but someone on the panel said that 60% of all Black wealth goes toward repaying student loans. That's a problem. That should all end right now. It should end immediately. I think Robert Smith might have said something to that effect. So this is big. This is really big. But until then, one thing you can definitely do is I think you should question every single system that you're connected to. So if you process the basic systems that exist in America, and we can point out the pros and the cons, right? You've got the educational system, absolutely terrible for the most part. There are many, many ways for you to learn and get the skills that you need. And also, when you're talking about education, it has to be a type of education that benefits your ability to strengthen your community, right? It has to benefit you. It cannot be education built solely for the purpose of serving other people. Number two, the economic system. The economic system, primarily job-seeking behavior, working for major corporations that are owned and controlled by somebody else. You want to pivot away from that. That's where we go toward things like Black-owned businesses and the ownership of property and stock. That should just be that. That's what it is. That's the holy trinity of wealth: entrepreneurship, stock, and real estate. That's it. And the other thing, to grow that economic garden, all you need is time. All you need is time. So when that newborn baby's born, you do things like the $5 a day plan. We've got this all figured out in the Black Business School. We've literally laid out almost like the perfect Black life in terms of being able to have whatever you want, all the wealth that you need, strong families, mental health, physical health. We've talked to our experts and we've laid it all out. So you do something like a $5 a day plan when your child is a baby. By the time that child's 25 years old, they have no financial problems. They are wealthier than most white people. It's easy. It's easy. It's easy. What makes it hard is your overcommitment to systems that do not serve you. Stop listening to the dummies in your life and start listening to people who give a damn about you. Seriously, that's what it's. So it's really the brainwashing. That's why we have the therapists, because we're like, okay, we got to unhypnotize people because we're so committed to these things that are so destructive. Destruction can be very addictive. So anyway, let me keep going. So we talked about the educational system, the economic system. What's another one? Systems of media and healthcare, things like that. I could talk about those, but generally speaking, I would almost say to you that when you're talking about a quality of life. Let me just recite this again really quick, because some of you may have heard this, but some of you haven't. So let me lay it out in a simple way for you so you can walk away with marching orders to understand your life, because I want your life to be better. Be better. That's it. And if it doesn't help in terms of you visualizing a better life for your family, then don't just ignore everything I'm saying. But this is what I do when I try to figure out, what does a good life look like? Because sometimes we don't even know what we want. We look at Instagram, we think that what somebody has on Instagram is what we want, or having a pretty girlfriend is what we want, or having a nice car is what we want. And no, I think it's deeper than that. But anyway, I want you to think about the areas of health, wealth, and relationships. That's it. Health, wealth, and relationships. Physical and mental health. Is your mental health where it needs to be? If it's not, how do you get there? If your mental health is not where it needs to be, how do you get there? There are so many systems in this society. Speaking of systematic oppression, which is bigger than systematic racism. I think there's systematic oppression. I just saw that Facebook is being sued for billions of dollars because social media is horrible for the psychological well-being of children. Little girls look at social media, they go crazy. Little boys get on there and start getting jealous of what other guys have and start doing crazy stuff, right? So mental health is big. Mental health is very big for the Black community because mental health affects how you treat each other. Mental health is what contributes to the gender wars that exist on the internet, where the women hate the men hate the women. You have to rise above that. Your mental health has to be on point. You have to invest in your mental health on a daily basis. And these are basic tools that most therapists can help you with, which might be things like breathing exercises, meditation, learning a conflict resolution. Just little things like that will do wonders for your mental health. And then also not working for people who hate you. That goes a long way in your mental health. So you can protect your child's mental health by helping that child to be economically free at an early age, so they can say, I need a mental health. I want to take a mental health day, and they can do that anytime they want without their boss calling and screaming at them about why you're not at work. Right? They don't have to answer those questions. So therefore their mental health is better. So mental health isn't just something that you work on for yourself. It's something that you work on for your kids. I see someone mention workouts. Yeah, workout. I mean, Lord, that ties into physical health. So we talked about the health area, mental and physical health, mind, body, soul, all that, right? So going to the gym, thinking about what you eat. Capitalism is crazy because since the money has infiltrated your government so badly, they literally feed you food that is killing you. They literally feed you food that is giving everybody cancer, and they know that it's giving everybody cancer, and they do not care. Right. So physical health means watching what you eat and taking your butt to the gym. Those are the two things. Right. And that way, what does that mean? Well, that means you break away from things that are discussed on NPR as just elements of systematic racism, but actually are things that are preventable, like the diabetes, heart disease, strokes, and all the other things that tend to happen to us more than everybody else. Yeah, racism played a part in that, but nobody made you eat that cheeseburger. Nobody told you that you should never work out. Nobody told you that it's okay to be 400 pounds, unless you're listening to like some of the entertainers that tell you that that's what you should do, right? So mental and physical health. What's the area? Wealth. We talk about wealth. Wealth, I would say financial wealth is probably captured in a couple areas. Cash flow and financial security. Do you have enough cash flow to do what you want? Do you have enough financial security to feel safe? You'd be amazed, and we've concluded this heavily in our Black Financial Therapy Department in the Black Business School. It's the first ever Black Financial Therapy Department ever created anywhere that we know of. In the Black Financial Therapy Department, we pretty much were able to understand that there is a massively strong link between financial security and mental health for Black people. Think about this. Give me a yes if you agree, if you understand this. When your money ain't right, you are stressed out. You are you're losing sleep. You're having night sweats. Also, your marriage is on the rocks and struggling. I just saw a video today where a lady was 30 years old and saying that she hated dating other 30-year-old men because she expects a man to make $100,000 a year. And I said, "Whoa, that's a pretty tall order to expect that." But that's what it is, right? And the biology actually says that women are just naturally more attracted to men that can provide financial security. That's just a fact. That's not going to go away, right? And then also what's really crazy when people say, well, those expectations are unrealistic. Yes, they are. Absolutely. Right. But actually, another funny thing that I read in a biology book is that most female mammals are attracted to the males that are in the top 5 to 10% of their cohort, right? So they don't want the average guy. They don't want the beta and the Charlie and the Delta. They want the alpha. They want the leader. They want the main guy, right? And so that's why you have some guys like the Kobe Bryant types or the Michael Jordan types that have all the girlfriends, and the regular guys get passed over a little bit, right? But then at the same time, though, if you want to talk about that from a relationship building standpoint, which would be our third category, I think that maybe as a kid, we have to learn the difference for young ladies between picking a boyfriend and picking a husband. I don't think you pick a husband the same way you pick a boyfriend, right? That's like me trying to hire somebody for a 10-year contract and searching for somebody who also would have been a temporary worker. A temp worker is not the same as somebody that you give a long-term contract to. Those are two different negotiations. And this is where, again, the therapist can help you with these sorts of things, because when you have broken families, your wealth and your mental health just kind of go, completely to the toilet. And the ability to build families and sustain those families is not just important for wealth. That is a specific skill set that should be taught to kids when they're young. Just the same way, if you're running a business, you should be trained on how to run a business, right? If you drive a car, you take driving lessons to learn how to control that car. Well, I think that to run a family or to run a household, you should be trained on that. I really do. I think that if we were trained on that, I think our families would be more structured. How does that spill over into economic health? Well, if 2 people or 3 people, you and the children, are all working together, building the family business, guess what? There's more money coming into the house. There's more ownership. There's more freedom and security. And then on top of that, that also spills over into your mental and physical health. My wife and I, we're much happier by the fact that we wake up in the morning and we don't actually have to leave the house unless we want to. So, and there's never been a day in this house where some white man has come in and oppressed us inside our own house. If a white man came in our house and tried to oppress us inside our house, I would kick his ass and throw him out the front door, because this is our territory. This is our kingdom. Any racism that will happen in this house will be racism caused by us. If we chose to do that, we're not like that. But if we did, if any oppression was to happen, it would be us who would be the oppressor. It would not be somebody from the outside. So process this for a minute. What if we couldn't hold the family together? What if we didn't have our mental health in check? What if we didn't? What if I was a crazy alcoholic, drug addict who liked to kick my wife in the face every morning just before breakfast? What if that was to happen? And then she said, "Get the hell up out of my house, you crazy man." And the kids have watched this, right? The kids are traumatized now because they saw me kicking their mother in the face. Now I'm gone. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go find me some hoes and go find some place where I don't want it. So I pack my bags and I leave the house. And then my wife is here fending for herself. The mortgage and all the bills are several $1,000s a month. Now she doesn't have a teammate anymore. She has nobody helping her pay those bills. So in addition to the trauma that she experienced with the husband that kicked her in the face before breakfast and the crazy angry kids who are mad because they've been traumatized, she now also has to leave the house to go find work. She has to go find some other way to get the bills paid. And so then at that point, her mental health is even further threatened because she's got to go into these hostile spaces every day to do only God knows what to make enough money to keep a roof over the heads of her kids. So do you understand what I'm saying when I explain to you how important it is to just at least make sure we're creating systems that train our kids to work together so that when they become adults, they understand the importance of submission to a system or to something that is bigger than themselves. I go crazy when I'm on the internet and I see people talking about relationships and they say, "Well, I refuse to submit. I ain't submitting to nothing." I'm sitting there thinking, well, I submit every day. I'm submitted to the team. I'm submitted to the family. I know I can't walk around here every day like I'm the only person that lives in this house. I'm submitted to the idea that as long as we keep this thing together, it's good. When we were at the All Black National Convention, you guys were very nice to me and I love y'all. I appreciate that. But I'm submitted to you. I'm like, okay, let me make sure I also show up right so that I do my job so we can keep this thing going, so we can all help each other, support each other, and make each other better. I understand and submit to the fact that we do better as a team than we would as a bunch of scattered individuals. right? These are just simple ideas. Animals understand that. Even animals, geese run in flocks. And they didn't go, nobody taught them to do that. They didn't go to college and take a class on flocking. They just know, if I'm with my homeboys, I'm safer and better off than if I'm out here trying to do everything by myself. And so I think that to some extent, these systems, particularly the system of media, has really taken you out of your natural element and taken away your common sense. Like when I hear a rapper telling me that he's the most important person in the world and don't need nobody, or some lady rapping about how she don't need no man, there's nothing natural about that. That's a traumatized person who's created a very unhealthy coping mechanism and who refuses to get therapy. So I would encourage you to start with those three areas. Just look at your life and just say, okay, health. Where am I physically and mentally? And if I'm not where I want to be, where do I get the tools to get there? Again, we have therapists coming in here all the time. My wife's a therapist too, by the way. You can look her up, Alicia Watkins. Wealth. Where am I economically? But don't just think about you and don't just think about now. When it comes to wealth, I want you to have what I call investor vision. The opposite of investor vision is when you're thinking about yourself and thinking about right now. How much money do I have right now? Right? That's not how it works. To really have true investor vision, you don't just think about yourself, you think about others that you care about. Your kids, your spouse, your boys, your girlfriends, whatever. And then also, you don't incarcerate your mind by only focusing on one point in time. There's very little you can do right now, today, that's going to change your whole economic situation. It's very hard to do. So what I want you to do is I want you to practice, give yourself some space. I want you to think broad, and I want you to think about it as a team. Like, what can we do as a team? And then I want you to think long. Like, what can happen over the next 10, 20, 30 years that's really going to set this thing up so that not only am I going to make my life better, but I'm also going to make life better for a lot of other people. That's how the wealth game is played. It's played in a broad, systematic framework, not in a solo, individual, look at me type of framework. And that's important to understand because you have a society where people seek out a lot of individual attention. You have a lot of egomaniac narcissists that become very famous, and then the children see these narcissists behaving that way in public, and they think, oh, that's how I become successful, is to act like that rapper who thinks he's the most important person in the world, and that's just not how it works. Right. So then and then the last piece in terms of relationships, everything you want to learn about relationships is in somebody's book. There are videos you can watch. There are therapists you can talk to. And one thing that we also have learned extensively, because my wife is a trauma specialist, is that there is a lot of unaddressed trauma in the community. And what that unaddressed trauma does is it causes you to continuously re-traumatize each other. So not only am I asking you to heal, and to consciously heal, I'm asking you to do a couple other things. I'm asking you to not just heal, but I encourage you to spend time around other people who understand the importance of healing. There's nothing worse than going to take a bath and getting all the mud off your body, but then standing next to somebody who's covered with mud, who's wiping mud on you, right? There's nothing worse than for you to do all the work to make yourself better, but the people that you're around the most think that there's nothing wrong with them. So all they're doing is setting you back because they're re-traumatizing you with their unhealthy behavior. So if you're picking a wife, picking a boyfriend, picking friends to hang out with, pick people that want to heal, that want to improve, that want to do better. That'll make it easier for you. And then the other thing too, is when you're talking about relationships and sort of making those things work, remember, it's not just about dating and all that. That's important. That's very important. But also business is built heavily on relationships. Your ability to make money is built on relationships. In fact, I'm going to say this before we go, and this is something that I don't even know if this is going to sound bad or going to make somebody mad at me, but because I care about y'all and because it's coming through me right now, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I saw something the other day about my friend Damon Dash. Damon Dash from Rockefeller Records. He was a smart guy. He hung out with Jay-Z a lot. And a lot of people look up to him from a business standpoint. They like him, because he sounds really cool when he talks. And he's very smart, though. He's a very smart guy. I spent lots of time around him, lots of time. And I like him. I don't dislike him at all. But I saw something the other day where he was pretty much saying that he was broke. And he was saying he was proud to be broke. And the reason he was saying he was proud to be broke was because you go through the ups and downs, and he can't pay his child support, but he's working on it. And and sometimes we have setbacks, and I agree 100%. That's 100% true. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. That's the nature of investing. However, let me say this. One of the reasons that I don't do well in the Damon Dash Kanye West space is that I don't think that there is enough effort to develop the level of maturity and humility necessary to form healthy relationships with other people that you're able to build with. And I want to say this. I'd say this. If you ever wonder why I get in trouble sometimes, because I tell this kind of truth, but I have to say it because I want you to understand what's going through my mind. But when I was working with Damon, put it this way, there's a reason why we don't work together anymore. And that's all I'll say on that. And I'll also say that one of the things I absolutely hate about hip hop culture is that it breeds a lot of extreme arrogance. And extremely arrogant people are very hard to build with. If you've ever been like in a relationship with somebody who was a total narcissist, have you ever been around someone like that? I'm not talking about Damon Dash anymore. So I don't even want to go deeper on that, dig that hole deeper, because I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm trying to be honest here. But hip hop culture is very bad for young Black boys. It's extremely bad for young Black boys because it teaches them to be arrogant, prick narcissists who think the whole world revolves around them. And if you listen to the lyrics, you listen to Kanye West's lyrics, his lyrics are nothing but him constantly telling you how he's better than you and he's the center of the earth and what he wants and what he needs and what he thinks is all that matters. And I absolutely hate it. I don't like it. In fact, it's so crazy. I remember hearing a person say to me something like, never call yourself humble. Nobody wants to be humble. You should be proud and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what's wrong with being humble? That I can be a great man and still be humble. I know I'm a great man. How many great people are in this room? How many of you are either great or are working to be great? Give me a yes right now. If you see yourself as a great person, if you know that any situation you come into, you're going to bring your best, you're going to do your best, you climb mountains, you've overcome obstacles, you started from the bottom, now you're here. Give me a yes. All the proud people, everybody who's proud to be great, raise your hand. I'm going to raise my hand too. I know I'm a great man. God made me. My mama gave me to God when she was a 17-year-old single mother and didn't know how she was going to take care of that baby. So I know that I was meant to be born, and I know how great I am. I know about my accomplishments. But here's the thing. There's a difference between me being a great man by claiming that I'm better than you versus me being a great man and saying, hey, man, how about we all be great together? You know what? I don't need to dance in the end zone on every play. I'm going to block for you because I want you to get some of the glory too. I want you to win as much as I win, right? Because I know that if I pour into you, then I know you're going to pour back into me because that's what we got. We got this thing going. That's the nature. That's how economics works. That's how love works. It's reciprocity. Reciprocity means that I'm going to throw the ball to you. You're going to throw the ball to me, and then I won't be dancing in the end zone all by myself. I won't be at the top of the mountain alone. I'm going to be standing next to a great Black woman. I'm going to be standing next to some extraordinary kids that have my back and I have theirs. I'm going to have friends all around me that are succeeding, right? Because all of us are a part of this, right? So what I'm saying is that I really feel that part of the struggle is that we don't really nurture that in our community. Even with Black leadership, there shouldn't be one guy who's like King Kong consciousness or one guy who's like the leader of everything. No, there should be committees and groups and boards and things like that. And you just don't see that. You see people saying, look at me, I'm the leader, I'm the best, I'm number one. And I'm gonna just tell you, I don't like that, not only because I don't like it in hip hop culture, also that is something that you tend to see in heavy capitalist white supremacist sorts of spaces. Just go back to that basic African proverb. Y'all know what it is. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. That ability to learn how to pick people around you and how to pour into them as much as you pour into yourself, and to trust that that's going to come back. That is actually basic economic theory that I just shared with you. That's how economies work. Economies don't work when one person hoards all the resources. Economies work when I'm giving stuff to you, you're giving stuff to me, he's sharing with him, he's sharing. When everybody's pouring into each other, that's when that's when economic systems work. And the problem is that these systems are also based on trust and things that Black people have a hard time with because we're so traumatized. This is why you must do the healing if you ever want to build your families. You must do the healing if you ever want to build your relationships. You must do the healing if you ever want to build your economics. That's extremely, extremely important. That's all I got to say. Thank you for listening. I had a lot of fun with you. We will be back next week. Couple key points. My new book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. You can find it at drboycebooks.com. My website's boycewatkins.com. If you'd like to get profit alerts and a list of AI stocks that I like, just text the word stock to 31996. Text stock to 31996. And of course, last but not least, if you'd like to get tickets for the next All Black National Convention, we will be in Chicago. So you can get them half off for this week only, and then they go back to regular price. Just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. That's for the tickets, VIP, vendor spots, everything. Anything that you want to do, you can go and lock it in now. I know you guys are going to love it. All right. So thank you all for hanging out, and I hope you also go support Dr. Anderson. His website is powernomics.com. And I'm just sitting here thinking, oh man, I hope Dame Dash don't get mad at me for talking like that. But I'm not speaking negatively. I liked him a lot. He's a very smart guy. But you know, I have to be honest. I can't sit here and lie about things. So, but it's not any form of disrespect at all. I think that he's legendary. In fact, I'll end with a compliment. The compliment is that I believe that there would be no Jay-Z without Damon Dash. I'm convinced of that. But also, I also understand why Jay-Z had to make an adjustment. And that's all I'll say. That's all I'm going to say. I'm done talking about that one. All right. So have a good day, everybody. God bless you. And I'll see you guys soon. Take care now. Good night.